Welcome into the Beaver Sports Radio Show. I'm your host, Mitchell Monge, alongside my main man, Soren, right here. Soren, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Good to be here again.
Hey, we got a lot of stuff to break down. Why don't you start it off for me?
All right, so following this last week in sports, we have some updates in golf, not commonly talked about, I feel like, in this environment. However, Spencer Tibbetts won the Husky Invitational to start off the season a couple weeks ago, and followed by a team-by-team matchup in Nevada, Reno, in a 36-hole event outside of Reno. Tibbetts finished with medalist honors in both, one of the top players in the country at this moment, as the men's team travels to the Hamptons in New York next Monday and Tuesday for a tournament highlighted by some of the best talent in the country in the East Coast. As well as that, Ellie Slama, one of the best women's players in the country, just finished up a second-place finish in Pullman as the team won in their second-best scored a par in relation in 3 days in team history. Both squads getting off to hot starts here.
Men's and women's golf. I play a little bit of golf myself. I don't know if you do, but I mean, it's a real tough sport going down there. I mean, especially with you had to add the pressure of being on the road. I mean, of course, they're probably used to their home course of Tristing Tree out there, played there a couple times. Pretty tough, but I mean, for the men's and women's golf team, sounds like they're having a great season so far.
No, big golfer over here. We're going to have to go out and hit the links sometime. Yeah. After that, we got some updates on volleyball. After 3 consecutive losses, the team bounced back to upset number 24 Oregon at Gill Coliseum 3-2. If you saw any of the highlights there through the Beavers' social media services, it was a fantastic turnout with the crowd and an impressive win. And they followed it up with another one against Colorado, winning 3-1.
Starting the Civil War off 1-0.
Always
got
good.
Volleyball in the way. You got football, men's and women's basketball. You got quite a bit of sports there to chalk it up. It's not just a one sport game, as a lot of people like to talk about with the football. I mean, hey,
of course,
volleyball, your Civil War, 1-0 Beavs.
As long as we win the Civil War, any sport just puts a smile on your
face.
There
you go. Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Any better than that. And following up on that, we've got men's and women's soccer. The women's team, of course, after that 8 consecutive win to start their season, they lost their first one in Pullman to Washington State, who was actually the 14th ranked team in the country, legit squad up there. But they have back-to-back road games now at Utah and Boulder, so they have a tough lineup here after that crazy start to the season after winning about only 3 games last season. Unbelievable.
Yeah, with the new coach on the field, I mean, women's soccer starting off 8-0. That's their best start in program history. Then, of course, you mentioned the loss to Washington State, but the lone score in that game, scored by Mackenzie Weinert. She leads the team with 7 goals. They also have a stud player out there in Brianna McReynolds. She's got 4 goals on the season. First career ever hat trick versus Houston a couple weeks ago.
That's incredible.
Yeah, McReynolds, for that week, she scored 4 goals on the weekend and was named the Offensive Player of the Week of September 16th for the Pac-12. So, I mean, they got some standouts on that team.
One of the best leagues in the country for soccer.
Right on.
A lot of players on that national women's squad that won the World Cup, of course, this summer. And following up with that, we got basketball also. Men's and women's schedules have been released. If you check up on the Oregon State website, there are some exciting matchups as the men host Oklahoma in Portland at the Moda Center. That's a fun one. And the women, of course, have been Pac-12 dominance for the past few seasons, and they are potential Final Four favorites if they're healthy this season, along with Oregon. We got a really exciting women's basketball season coming up.
So did you see the rankings that came out this week?
No, I didn't. No.
So Oregon comes in at number 1. Oregon State coming in at number 6. Yep.
Sabrina Ionescu.
Ionescu, obviously the top player in the country,
She's
a walking triple-double, obviously. Considered Oregon State before she committed to Oregon her freshman year. But anyways, Sabrina Ionescu, of course, the Beavs, they returned a slew of just stud veterans. They got Destiny Slocum, Aaliyah Goodman. Hopefully they can get Kat Tudor back, obviously coming back off the ACL tear. Rook said she's going to, work her way back into it. Obviously not Russia, but 3-point specialist right there. They got Maddie Washington, Taya Corsdale down on the post, and hopefully, you and I will be able to call some of those games. I got to call the NCAA women's tournament last year, of course. Tough first game against, I believe it was Boise State before going out and playing Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
So, women's basketball,
they're so much fun to watch.
Oh, yeah. Perennial powerhouse in the Pac-12.
Seriously.
State of Oregon got 2 really good teams there. And then we're going to go on to the biggest sport so far of the week, football. Lost 31-28 to Stanford at home. I mean, my buddy Matt Volman and I were on the call. It was a really exciting game down to the finish. Of course, at halftime, 14-0, not really
21
didn't.
nothing at a point there.
Exactly. I mean, you didn't really see it as being completely out at halftime, but for Oregon State, obviously they trailed 21-0, as you mentioned, start of the third quarter. So they got the ball to start the third quarter, gave it up. Stanford goes down, scores a touchdown. It's 21-0. You're looking at the clock and you're just starting to count down the time. And then all of a sudden they score a touchdown, 2 straight rather, to make it 21-14. Stanford gets 1 in the end zone, and then Oregon State comes back, scores 2 more unanswered, and all of a sudden you got a 28-28 ball game, $1:55 to go. And
reminiscent of Boulder last year at Colorado.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jake Luton, I mean, leading the comeback in that one, similar score, but so you got the tie ball game coming back, and then I'm sitting up there. I called the game and get the touchdown call. Artavis Pierce in from 2 yards out. I mean, and then I'm looking at the clock and I'm thinking, 1:55, Stanford and David Shaw. I mean, this just feels like
another reminiscent of a couple seasons ago when we hosted them.
Right, exactly. And to me, I'm thinking, I watch a bunch of NFL games personally.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like this is giving the ball back to like Tom Brady and the Patriots with 2 minutes to go. It's like
one of the best coaches in the country.
Exactly. There. And then you just feel like, man, dude, we got a 28-all ball game. It's tied up. Oregon State did their job. Everything. AP was just a stud in that game.
Gosh.
I mean,
him and Isaiah.
Yeah,
Hawkins.
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
And they're just tearing it up. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, we got 2 minutes left in this ball game. This is not even close to over.
Got the crowd back into it, everything there in that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, of course, Stanford gets the 50-plus yard touchdown return. You hit the 18-yard out.
They can finish the field goal.
Exactly. So 28 all, and then, of course, Stanford, big kickoff return, kind of break it out. Seemed like Oregon State almost outkicked their coverage a little bit. That was probably the deepest kick of the game. Went down in the end zone. Most of Schuker's kickoffs were caught at about the 5-yard line. Yeah. So then Oregon State goes ahead, and they take the ball up. Or rather, Stanford takes the ball off the left side, get it right at, if just not across the 50. And you've got Davis Mills coming in, who's the #1 pro-style quarterback in 2017. So, I mean, it's not like Stanford missing KJ Costello is really skipping a step, per se, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that.
And then Davis Mills obviously comes out. He hits Osiris St. Brown on an 18-yard out. And then from there, Stanford's already in field goal territory in 2 plays. So for Stanford, it's like, wow, well, A, if you're Oregon State, you have to realize how much time's left on the clock. And B, I mean, it is Stanford. It is David Shaw. They're a very skilled team. I mean, probably what you would consider a perennial powerhouse in the Pac-12.
Of course. I mean, nationally, just underrated consistently. I mean, I cannot believe still what David Shaw can do with nothing. I mean, at least what it seems from the outside. We see all these smart kids, our perspective on it. But from Andrew Luck to Kevin Hogan to KJ Costello, I mean, Andrew Luck's the most famous of them, obviously, but each of them have gone into an environment that no one expected them to do something. For example, Hogan, when he took Stanford up to Oregon, when Oregon was #1 in 2014 or 2013, I believe, but led them to that. I think it was 17-14 last second. I think it was a touchdown pass to Zach Ertz. Weird memory there, but crazy good coach. Great program. Brought it from nothing, Jim Harbaugh, of course, and now they're just a power in the Pac-12. I mean, this season they have one of the toughest schedules in the country, so that explains their difficult start.
Exactly. I mean, you've got Northwestern, Big Ten power. I mean, not really a powerhouse, but obviously
always 7-5.
Exactly. Very competitive year in and year out. And then you go
USC.
Right. You have USC, who is probably 21 in the country, I believe, at the time. And then you go UCF on the road, obviously.
Winningest program.
Yeah, exactly. Difficult place to play on the road. You go to Central Florida, and if you're not playing a tough opponent, still, for a Pac-12 team to travel to the East Coast, I mean, just that time change alone has got to have an effect on you.
Of course.
So there's that, and then you come back home and you play Oregon, who's a top 15 team in the country at the time, I believe 13. Yeah, obviously they were went into 13 as the bye week, and
a sloppy win by Oregon, but still, I mean,
well, Oregon really controlled the ball in that game. Yeah. Took control of the clock, game tempo, game management. I mean, just really good job by Oregon in that game. But I mean, Stanford's coming in at 1-3, Oregon State at 1-2, both 1-win teams. Stanford 0-2 in the Pac-12. Oregon State their first Pac-12 game. And when you look to the schedule preseason, this really seemed like it was going to be a quote-unquote trap game for Stanford. You thought Stanford was going to come in, obviously, facing a couple big ranked opponents. If not, maybe, who knows, they could have been undefeated in the Pac-12. I mean, Oregon's obviously going to be a tough game, but Stanford's had good success recently against them.
And USC.
Right. So for Stanford, it really looked like they had a chance to come in strong to the season. KJ Costello's battling injuries, obviously took the helmet to the head in the Northwestern game. Hit his hand on a helmet on the side, which is why he didn't play against Oregon State. But I mean, for Stanford, their season, if they didn't beat Oregon State and it really came down to the wire, they're looking at a season without a bowl game.
You could look at it as a must-win. I mean, you look at it in terms of what's at stake for Stanford from that difficult start. And with the Pac-12, you really never know who's going to beat who. Mm-hmm. We see that again throughout this start. I mean, Cal, of course, against ASU last week. You just never know.
And that's probably one of the biggest knocks on the conferences nationally is you see a lot of people will, when you talk about the Power Five, kind of the last team that comes into that is, oh, well, there's the Pac-12 on the side.
Of course.
And when you really think about it, it's like, well, is the Pac-12 really that much worse than other teams in the Pac, or rather in the Power Five? When you look at it, no, not really. And I mean, and we'll get to this later. I love what Mike Leach said. He said you take any three teams in the bottom of the conference from the Pac-12 and you put them against any of the bottom three teams from any other Power Five conference in the country.
Couldn't
and he
agree
goes,
with that more.
you got. I mean, Pac-12 will beat those bottom three in any other conference.
Offensive game also that a lot of the rest of the country. I mean, the Pac-12 really started modern college football in a way.
Right.
You could say Chip Kelly and whatnot, but you see Mike Leach's air raid. He transferred over from Texas Tech to the Pac-12.
Yep.
Then you have other programs coming in. UW. I mean, it was dominated by Stanford and Oregon for a little stretch there in the north. It continuously has, but I mean, Cal went to Ole Miss, who's not a bad program. I mean, as of late, that's a big win. I mean, they ended up playing Alabama the next week. They got beaten pretty soundly, but still, I mean, you would assume that Oregon's going to beat Cal or maybe Washington by a fair amount, and Alabama beating them by a similar amount. It's obviously tough to compare those two just in terms of preparation, but I do believe that the Pac-12 can hang with more teams than they get credit for.
Right, so we're going to go ahead and rope back to that Stanford-Oregon State game, give you the scoring breakdown. First quarter, it was 7-0 at the end, with $1:37 to go. Michael Wilson, Stanford wide receiver, hauled in a 26-yard pass from Davis Mills. And one of the things that I noticed here, and it's kind of consistent throughout the whole game, Jet Toner, kicker for Stanford. I mean, he's been money all year, nailed all of his extra points, and then obviously the game-winning field goal. But going into that game, he was 2 for 2 on field goal attempts before the Oregon State game. So he moved into a share of 7th all-time in Stanford's record book with 42 made field goals. And with that one, now he's one behind Rod Garcia's 44. So for Toner, I mean, he was 33 of 38 going into the game on field goals of under 40 yards. So for Stanford, really, at the end of the game, it was just getting it in within a 40-yard kick, and Jet Toner's just basically automatic.
It's nice to have confidence in a kicker like that.
Oregon State fans would know about what it's like to have confidence from a kicker. Anyway, second quarter is Stanford tight end Colby Parkinson hauling in a 3-yard pass from Davis Mills. So that made it 14-0 at the half. And at halftime, if you're Oregon State going into that, you have to really think, okay, so what do we need to change for the second half? First off, obviously, it was the offense. Offense didn't put up any points. But defensively, I mean, Oregon State looked, I don't want to say subpar, but they looked surprisingly average. Is that fair to say? They, after being probably one of the worst defenses in all the FBS, I mean, especially by statistical categories, they look competitive in that first half, holding Stanford to 14 points, albeit Stanford only averaging 17.5 points per game all season. But still, I mean, tell me what you think about like Oregon State's defense in the first half, and I've got a couple stats to back it up. But I mean, what was your thoughts, I guess, from just watching them? They obviously 14 points is never good, I guess, quote unquote. But at the same time, I mean, this is a team that has been on the regular allowing over 150 rush yards in the first half, and they were looking at a 28-31 deficit.
Their secondary is vastly improved. It is shocking in some situations.
Well, Sean Wilson leads the team in tackles as starting safety.
No, I mean, you see on the the touchdown to start the third quarter to Bryson Tremaine and Colby Parkinson, they're both a lot bigger than the cornerbacks they were guarding. It was pretty much a box out in those two situations. But the fact that they weren't able to move the ball as much through the air as I would have anticipated was impressive, but there were gaps certainly through the offensive line, possibly just Stanford's offensive line in the first place through the first half that seeked room for improvement. However, in the second half, that was much improved again. But I completely agree with you. I am shocked. But at the same time, quick little snippet here for against Oklahoma State earlier this season, who has proved to be legit. Chuba Hubbard is the leading rusher in the country right now, and Tylan Wallace is third in the country, followed actually just shortly behind. Eighth is Isaiah Hodgins, our very own receiver.
I mean, or Oklahoma State rather, their offense has just been spectacular. You knew it from just watching that first game. Chuba Hubbard's a special player. I mean, he's so dynamic as a runner. But really quickly, back to the game here. So with 6:14 to go in the third quarter, you mentioned it, Bryson Tremaine, 3-yard pass from Davis Mills. So at that point, it's 21-0 Stanford. And this is one of those times where, especially last season, you would see Oregon State players on the sideline, really start hanging their heads. And this was one of the times where it was, okay, it's 21-0. We're down 21-0. We're out of this game. And really, that was not very eminent on Saturday. It was, you could see guys hyping them up. And so Oregon State, they get the ball, and in only it was 4:53 was the exact time, but Oregon State goes down the field 75 yards and gets a touchdown. Isaiah Hodgins, and I don't know if you saw it or not,
ridiculous catch.
So Isaiah Hodgins on a slant route, Luton throws it behind him, and Hodgins reaches out,
triple coverage,
extends behind him, and he, with just 3 fingers, almost like he's going to grab the ball like the Odell catch, but behind him, and instead of grabbing it, he just tips it to himself, secures it for the touchdown pass. I mean, one of the more incredible passes, obviously Isaiah Hodgins, rather. Just
the awareness of that and flexibility and focus is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. He's a special talent. So Oregon State cut the lead to 21-7 at that point, and then end of the third quarter, you're looking at the scoreboard, 21-7. Okay, maybe I've seen this before, but then Oregon State, 3 and out, then they get the ball back. And this was when Artavis Pierce really started to, say, hey, I'm here, almost I'm back in a sense, because he was hurt in and out last season, lost the starting spot to Jefferson. But Pierce rips off a 43-yarder on just a magnificent run. Usually you think of the two-headed rushing attack for Oregon State, and you say, you know what, okay, we got the downhill runner in Artavis Pierce. He's going to hit the hole. He's going to run hard, and he's going to keep sprinting. And then Jefferson's more the patient back who, sees the crease and goes. But this time it was Pierce, really patient, waited, and Stanford's defense really over-pursued to that right side of the initial run, and Pierce just saw the cutback lane, and he just took off, and he's one of the fastest players on the team, if not the fastest, probably him and Josiah Irish. Anyways, Pierce rips off a 43-yard run, so that drive goes 8 plays, 95 yards after Tyjon Lindsey on that fair catch. He didn't catch at the 20-yard line. I mean, could have caught that. It would have made the drive 15, 20 yards shorter. Anyways, let's roll down to the 5. But 25 yards, 2 minutes and 21 seconds. So a really crisp drive for Oregon State. At this point, it's 21-14. That's when you see like Jalen Moore in street clothes and the jersey on the side. He's running on
everyone up.
Exactly, screaming to get everybody going.
These are legitimate drives. I mean, comparably to last season and otherwise, I mean, in college football, you don't see as much clock control, which is something that Stanford emphasizes. But 11 plays, 75 yards, first one, second one, 2.5 minutes. I mean, these
8 plays, 95 yards.
And these are breakouts, which are why they're shortening them, but still.
Exactly. And then so Stanford answered back. Davis Mills led a nice 72-yard drive in 6 plays, and he hit, or rather, it was Colby Parkinson. This was the Philly special that they ran. The handoff, toss it to Colby Parkinson, who was lined up at the wideout. And I hate to say it, but Oregon State, they got mossed on that play. I mean, Davis Mills is a quarterback, and he went up and got that ball over the top, albeit Sean Wilson did over-pursue the play, but at the same time,
Over pursuit was the reason there. We'll just say it was.
Yeah, I mean,
it looked like he was going to drop it when he landed on his back too, but that showed his athleticism there. That was irritating to see, not going to lie.
At the same time, I mean, really incredible play. Davis Mills just showing that he's an athlete. So Oregon State at this time, 9:31 to go in the ball game. They're down 28-14. Get the ball at their own 25-yard line, and Oregon State goes 6 plays, 2 minutes and 26 seconds to cap it off. The end of the one, they ran the Jack Coletto. We were trying to come up with a name for this, okay? So you got to help me out. We've come up with the Wild Beaver, the Wild Coletto, and then, of course, just running with with the Wildcat. I mean, do you have a preference out of those three?
I like the Wild reference there, like a little major league in there.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, it's kind of the Wildcat package, except it's not run with a quarterback, so I don't feel proper, or rather, it's not run with a running back if they have the former quarterback in there. So I don't know if the Wildcat fits or if we should go Wild Beaver to throw it to Oregon State, or the Wild Coletto. You know, we got the Wildcat.
Wild Coletto works pretty well to me.
Yeah, I thought I like the Wild Coletto. Anyway, so
similar to what the Saints are doing right now in the NFL.
Right. Yeah. Taysom Hill, Jack Coletto. I mean, maybe they should get him a draft pick for that. Anyway, so Coletto handed it off. BJ Baylor on the outside sweep. He got in from 1 yard out. That made it 28-21. And you really saw some energy and life from the defense at this point. It was a lot of just enthusiasm, and you really saw like the we're here to ball mentality.
It's a different energy.
Yes, very much so. It wasn't the, hey, we're going to roll over or lay down or anything like that. It was, hey, you know, we've got a job to do. We're right in this game. It's 28-21.
You know, I don't want to speak too soon for this because it's a long season, and Smith obviously has a lot to do within his future as a coach. But there is a different energy going on with this team that you don't really see a lot, maybe because we don't watch a lot of teams that go 1-11, 2-10 that aren't our program. But there's like a changing of the guard in a way that we were almost impatient for because we were used to so much success, and we see it on the other side, like 45 minutes down the road. Eugene has been so used to this, but it's looking good right now.
Yeah, the mentality is different. The culture is different. You can definitely tell that there's a change going on in the air. So anyways, with $1:55 to go, Oregon State had gone on a 10-play, 77-yard drive in 2.5 minutes, capped it off with an Artavis Pierce 1-yard touchdown run. And that was when, we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, but Oregon State running the hurry-up offense the whole time, did a great job moving the ball down the field. So anyways, that ties the ball game 28-28.
And then saw Luton sneak there for a third down.
Right, yep. Yeah. And so then, obviously, you guys know what happens the rest of the way down. Give up the long kickoff return, 18-yard out to Osiris St. Brown, couple run plays, and then, of course, big blow-up in the backfield there. It's about a 6-yard loss. Jordan Whitley on the tackle, and then 39-yard field goal, so under 40 yards, right in Jet Toner's range, and he just knocked it home. 1 second to go. Obviously, the kickoff return didn't get anywhere, but
you know, I saw an interesting article to jump into our finish of this game, and it was about how the Beavers need to learn how to win. I mean, they
how to finish.
How to finish in a way, and it's interesting because the first few games you see them with these hot starts and they can't finish in a way.
Right.
And it's almost totally opposite in this one, but they're getting used to it. I mean, it's rare. It's rare. Yeah. It's not an FCS team. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, Pac-12 competition, you love to see them heading close in this game. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We'll be right back here on KBVR Corvallis with the Beaver Sports Radio Show. Mitchell Monge and Soren right here. Keep it locked to 88.7 KBVR Corvallis.
In this political climate, it's more important than ever to know who carries your voice in government. Oregon Senators are Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley, and the 4th District's Peter DeFazio represents the area around the OSU campus and House of Representatives. To make your voice heard, you can find emails and phone numbers for your congresspeople at senate.gov and house.gov. To go beyond the headlines and sound bites to get a better sense of how complex political issues affect us here at home, you can listen to Orange Media Network's Perspectives podcast with me, Joe Wolf. Perspectives is available on iTunes and Google Play. Just search Orange Media Network Perspectives and subscribe.
Hey, you're tuned in to KBVR FM, Oregon State's student-run, student-operated radio station.
The number one place for people with a passion for music to come and get together and share that passion with the world.
Whoa, the whole world.
The whole world.
Yeah, hopefully they're listening to something else.
Should I cancel my audition for American Idol?
You might want to think about it.
What's up, Beaver Nation? This is Grant, member of the Improv Comedy Club at Oregon State University, here to tell you that first off, we exist, and second, you can attend our meetings. They're free for all OSU students to attend. If you are interested in hanging out with us, hit up our email improv.comedy@oregonstate.edu or our Facebook page at Improv Comedy Club at Oregon State University. Hit us up there, and we hope to hear from you soon. Go Bees.
The Nature Conservancy invites anyone interested in preserving Cascade Head Preserve to participate in a volunteer work party taking place on Saturday, October 5th. Located near Lincoln City, Cascade Head is a coastal promontory overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The preserve provides critical habitat for native prairie grasses, rare wildflowers, the threatened Oregon silver spot butterfly, and the Cascade Head catchfly. The work party includes a 4 to 5 mile round-trip hike with some elevation gain. Volunteers may be required to hike off-trail or stand on uneven ground while working. Please bring hiking shoes, a day pack, lunch, snacks, a full water bottle, layers of clothing to be prepared for any weather, a hat, and sunscreen. If you have gloves, please bring them. If not, we have some that you can borrow. Registration is required at nature.org/Oregon Work Parties. Contact OR volunteers at tnc.org with any questions.
Craft Center membership is now free for OSU students. Pyrography, raku firing, indigo dyeing, stained glass, 3D modeling, screen printing, and more. Come take a class with the Craft Center. We're open Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 10 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Visit us in the basement of the Student Experience Center for more information and to sign up for your free student membership.
Do you want to keep up with everything from KBVR FM? On our Twitter at KBVR_FM, you can talk with your favorite DJ, stay up on the latest from our music blog, and let us know what you've been listening to. We care about what you have to say here at your college station, 88.7 FM, KBVR, Corvallis.
Welcome back into the Beaver Sports Radio Show. I'm your host, Mitchell Monge, alongside my partner, Soren, right here with us. We just did a quick breakdown of the Beavers' last football game against the Stanford Cardinal. Obviously, the Beavers dropped that one at home, 31-28, a tough loss for Jonathan Smith's program. After, not really a promising start, but at the same time, they showed a lot of improvement compared to last season and then really just weren't able to, and you mentioned it, Soren, hit the nail right on the head there, weren't able to finish. Kind of been a storyline, and for Oregon State moving forward, they're definitely going to have to make an adjustment with that with UCLA coming up this weekend. First off, I just wanted to touch on a couple of statistics. How about that man, Hamilka Rashed Jr., outside linebacker, a redshirt junior, leads the Pac-12 in sacks with 5 and tackles for loss with 7.5. So after, Jonathan Smith made the starting, it wasn't per se a starting title, but Addison Gumbs and Matthew Tago were the two outside linebackers that Smith named to start on the depth chart. But really, it was the tandem of Hamilka Rashed Jr. and Monge Hughes-Murray, the senior who's obviously out with a foot injury this year, but it was Rashed Jr. and Hughes-Murray were running together, and then Tago and Gumbs were running together. Now you're missing Matthew Tago, Addison Gumbs, and Monge Hughes-Murray. So your starters are Hamilka Rashed Jr. and John McCartan, the true sophomore. And Rashed Jr., obviously you knew he had the body, he had the degree of, basically was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school coming in, but man, this year he's really coming to his own. Again, 5 sacks, leads the Pac-12, and 7.5 tied for 1 and forced fumbles in the Pac-12 as well with 2. But I mean, when you want to look for improvement on defense, you just look right there to outside linebacker Hamika Rashed Jr., number 9. He's been tearing it up, is in the backfield, it seems like almost every play. Quarterback hits, he's got the quarterback on the ground, and a team that really struggled to get sacks last season, they got the conference leader.
And that last drive, was it the running back, Stanford's running back coming in? He shot through the...
That was Jordan Whitley who came through there, yep.
Of course.
But still, I mean, Rashed...
the first time, I've seen Rashed Jr. playing was when I was actually in the booth against Cal Poly.
Okay.
I saw him and John McCartan.
Yep.
They were everywhere.
Well, and it's... You really got 2 different guys. Rashed's just big. He's bulked up, and he's just kind of that guy. He's fundamentally really sound. I mean, people obviously question his intelligence coming out of high school because he struggled in school, but I mean, school isn't everything. So when you come here, second year in defensive coordinator Tim Tibesar's system, and he's made massive strides coming in. I mean, and I think just the level of comfort with that, and then again, Elu Aiden, Jordan Whitley, as you mentioned, with the pressure on the inside, they've been doing a really good job. That defensive line that went from an area of high concern preseason to now something that's manageable, I think is the right word. I mean, it's not outstanding, but it's not terrible. It's something you can live with, you know?
Which you can say with almost every facet of the team right now.
Right, it went from terrible to average, right? Of
course, yeah.
So even though you're not seeing the improvement in the win total, you're still seeing those improvements on the field. I mean, you can just turn 6-year senior Jake Luton. He's 4th in the Pac-12 in passing yards per game, averaging 253 per game. Tied first in the Pac-12 and nationally with no picks. Boasts a 9.0 TD to interception ratio. And the Beavers are the number 1, tied for the first team in the country with only 1 turnover all season among FBS teams. I mean, this is a team that struggled to force turnovers and struggled to not turn over the ball. All of a sudden, they have an interception, several forced fumbles on the season, and their quarterback hasn't thrown any picks. The running backs haven't fumbled the ball either. So you're going from a team that's really just struggled to win the turnover battle to a team that was +3 in turnover margin going into Stanford.
The biggest conversation and pregame breakdown for a lot of teams as well, even solid ones, is winning the turnover battle. And the fact that Oregon State isn't shooting themselves in the foot on a lot of occasions just shows that they have the ability to work with that improvement.
But it hasn't translated to wins yet.
Exactly. See, that is a problem that shows how much room for improvement there really was.
Right.
But it's looking up.
Yeah, I mean, and that offense, we've always mentioned it. Coach Smith, an offensive-minded head coach. Coach Brian Lindgren came over from Colorado. He was a quarterback at University of Idaho. He's got that mentality. I mean, Michael Petrie, the running back coach, he's done a great job in recruiting. Not only did he bring in Jamar Jefferson, he's got a commit from, I want to say it's Walnut Creek, California, and Isaiah Newell. And he's also got the true freshman Teron Madison, who's a big 6'2" bruising back. So, I mean, the backfield has never really been a problem. And get this. So, Jamar Jefferson and Artavis Pierce ranked number 3 and 4 in yards per game in the Pac-12, respectively. 95.7 for Jefferson, 90.8 for Pierce.
Wow.
AP is averaging 8.4 yards per carry.
You're kidding.
8.4 yards per carry.
Peterson numbers right there in his
Oh, yeah. They call him AP for a reason. Leads the team, 8.4 yards per carry, and leads the Pac-12. Pierce is tied for 3rd in the conference with 4 rushing touchdowns, and his longest of the season was that 43-yard run against Stanford, had 2 in the Stanford game. Can you name the only FBS team with 2 players averaging 90-plus yards per game?
Oregon.
It's
Kenyon Barnwell and Michael James.
No, I'm saying for this this season, it's Oregon State.
It's Oregon State.
Oregon State is the only team, I repeat, the only team in the FBS with 2 players averaging over 90-plus rush yards per game.
You know, some of these stats you're throwing at me are head scratchers because
with
all this, we're still at 1 and 4.
So this is one of those things that when you look at it,
1 and 3.
Right, 1 and 3, but still, when you want progress and you're looking, I mean, a lot of the people coming in, not necessarily just in football, but in all sports, are more focused on analytics and obviously it was pretty funny. Now that I say that, I think of Bill Belichick, who said, "I hate analytics. I never used any of them," in his press conference. But coming back to Oregon State, I mean, a team that you see that now they've got the Damn Analytics Squad on Twitter. You can follow them, and they've got breakdowns for all of Mitch Canham's new team. I mean, they had a kid who touched, I want to say Andy Armstrong hit 103, hit speed off the bat in one of the fall camps. Really quickly, while I'm thinking about it, Oregon State has fall scrimmage this Saturday. Two rather exhibition games, should be 14 innings against Sacramento State, and they will follow up with the University of British Columbia. Those are scheduled for 1 p.m. Pacific starts in Goss Stadium, free admission. But again, going back to analytics, it's one of those things that's now becoming more and more popular in sports. And now that they've utilized it, you can look at, for example, Oregon State, who you see all these statistics. You see every sort of turnover margin. We mentioned it. Stat that points towards, or rather has a positive correlation with win total, is now starting to favor Oregon State in significant categories, especially on the defensive side, one of the areas that they struggled last year. So, I mean, obviously, to somebody who said Oregon State is not much better and they're not going to win more than 1 to 2 games, they're not going to be improved from last season record-wise. Yeah, maybe record-wise, the football team won't show the wins. But if you go to the other side, I mean, of it, their statistics,
Isaiah
the way
Hodgins,
they played,
8th in the country receiving.
Right, that's one of the ones that's next on my list.
Oh yeah.
So we'll spin right into it, but still, when we're talking about statistics, I mean, man, this team's very good, and one of those things is that it correlates to wins in due time. Jonathan Smith took over a program that Gary Anderson left mid-season when you threw the secondaries coach in Corey Hall. I mean, there was no cohesiveness on that team. Now Smith bringing in his own recruits, working second year in the system. They got their future quarterback in Tristan Gebbia. You've got your future running back. It's obviously going to be Jamar Jefferson. You got Artavis Pierce for the rest of the year. Isaiah Hodgins, a standout receiver. You've got a wide receiver commit, a former 4-star on Rivals, Zariah Beeson. They knocked him down to a 3-star, but still standout receiver. Speaking of standout receivers, let's talk a little bit about the man on our Oregon State campus. Call him the BMOC. Isaiah Hodgins leads the Pac-12 in yards per game, 127.3. Second in the Pac-12 in touchdowns and 6th nationally. He trails Aesop Winston Jr. of Washington State. Winston Jr.'s got 8 touchdowns. Hodgins with 6. Second in the Pac-12 in receptions, 9th nationally. Trails Micah Pittman in the pack of USC. Hodgins has 33. Pittman has 35. And as you mentioned it, 8th nationally in total yards, 509. That's good for first in the Pac-12. So, I mean, Soren, really quickly, what are your thoughts on this man, Isaiah Hodgins? Obviously, you mentioned it a little bit earlier in the show, but Tylan Wallace, Oregon State, or rather Oklahoma State receiver who came in to Corvallis for that first game, is probably, I'd say right now, a front runner for the Biletnikoff Award. Obviously, one that was won in 2013 by Oregon State receiver Brandon Cooks. But still, coming back to that, if you don't have somebody like Tylan Wallace is there, why not Isaiah Hodgins?
Yeah. I mean, the thing with the Biletnikoff Award compared to others is it doesn't solely rely, or in a way solely rely, on wins per the season. And
right.
Mike Haas, for example, Oregon State 2006, team wasn't that great. Brandon Cook's season was surprising for the team's record, but I think Isaiah Hodgins will finish up if he's healthy, keep in mind, and if they win a couple games. No, of course not. Knocking on wood right now. But I believe he will have a chance to be a finalist for the award. We're going to have to win some games quickly. The Beavers will, if that's going to happen. But why not? I mean, Odell, highlight there.
Yeah.
Especially Champ Fleming's Moss, the guy, against...
Yeah, number 1 on You Got Moss. Champ Fleming's going up over Cal Poly. I still thought in that Hawaii game, on the fade route to Isaiah Hodgins on the touchdown where he went up and he actually caught the ball over the top of the Hawaii defender, I thought that was going to be on there. But again, it was only broadcast on Facebook Live in the States and Spectrum Sports in Hawaii. Exactly. Obviously, I mean, you love to see it. You got shout outs from, Randy Moss. You mentioned it on Twitter also. From a former slot guy, another small guy, Andrew Hawkins, formerly of the Bengals and the Browns. So, I mean, Champ got a lot of love on Twitter for that. It was a spectacular catch, and I remember him saying, I heard it, I believe it might have been on the Beaver Sports podcast, but that when he made that catch, he thought, that's just another catch, just went up and got it, just doing my job. And then he says Isaiah Hodgins came over to him on the sideline and was like, whoa, man, like that's gonna be all over Twitter. You're gonna get a ton of dap on that on Twitter, and then all of a sudden he was like, wow, that's like, and then he goes, I saw it after the game and I was like, oh wow, that looks pretty good. And then of course turns out to be number one on You Got Mossed, a great catch. But a quick another note on Champ Flemings, he leads the Pac-12 in all-purpose yards per game with 133.5 on average. Isaiah Hodgins coming in at number 2, so 1-2 are Beavers in the Pac-12 in all-purpose yards per game. Champ Flemings is 6th in the Pac-12 in all-purpose yards total with 534. 312 of those come on return yards. That's good enough for 3rd in the Pac-12. So Champ Flemings, not only is he a stud receiver at 5'5", 145, but man, is he a dynamic kick returner too.
Oh my goodness. He's all over the place. He's like a hybrid player in that position. And the more you mention these statistics, it makes me more weary of our losses that have been close. We could have a couple more wins here.
Yep.
Always theoretically, whenever a team loses close one, you can always say that. But it makes me wonder, I mean, if we beat Hawaii,
Hawaii was a very winnable game.
That was a very winnable game.
Yep.
Stanford, winnable game again. I mean,
so you're looking at a team that could be 3-1 here. I mean, obviously Oklahoma State's now jumped into, I believe it was number 21.
They barely lost to Texas.
Right. That game's always competitive, Oklahoma State, but Mike Gundy, obviously one of the longest tenured head coaches in the FBS. They've got a lot of stability around their program, but now they're ranked top 25. So you look at, okay, so first game lost to now a top 25 ranked opponent. Game in Hawaii should have won. Same score, 31-28. Game
convincing against Cal Poly, which is rare for us against FCS schools in the past.
Albeit, I will say I did see this one coming a bit more than other ones because Oregon State, they struggled against Portland State. This is a completely different scenario, but that was the last time they really struggled against an FCS team. But the Mountain West had the most wins of any conference against Power 5 conferences.
Eastern Washington went to the national championship game last year. I mean,
yeah, but still, it's
Weber State.
That Mountain West is really, I'd say, the 6th power conference, if you want to call it that. I mean,
you could say that, yeah.
Obviously, they've got Boise State, BYU, a couple of perennial, very competitive teams. San Diego State knocked off UCLA, but still, and then Cal Poly is obviously Big Sky. So, I mean, if you want to nitpick, I guess they would be a little bit lower. But I want to go back and I want to get your take on Isaiah Hodgins because this is one of the things that's starting to go around a little bit more. Does Isaiah Hodgins go to the NFL draft after this season?
I think he does. The reason for this being his draft stock's going to continue to rise. Granted, he's healthy.
Where do you see him in the draft? Right now, if I had to if I had to say, write down your name right now, and I had to say Soren, Isaiah Hodgins draft projection, what round would you want me to put right now?
I do think he'd get picked up in the draft by a team, not some practice squad player, but I want to say somewhere around the 4th round right now that could continue to rise.
Okay, that's fair.
What about yourself?
That's about where I see Matt.
Yeah.
So for me personally, the way I view the situation is I think, okay, if I'm in Isaiah Hodgins' position, I'm at a school that's, okay, A, on the come up, but B, if I've got the money readily available, why not go ahead and take it? Why not go to the NFL draft, even though there's the risk of being undrafted? There's the risk of having to take a late draft, rather get selected late in the draft and have to take a pick for less money. But if I continue having the same season consistently throughout the year, and I become one of the top receivers in the Pac-12 in maybe even in recent memory if he keeps this up, but still, why not take that? I think if he's going out and he sees himself on a 3 to 4, a 3rd to 4th round draft grade, he should go. And that's just my honest opinion.
No doubt.
I don't see why he should continue to stay here with the chemistry that he has had with Jake Luton from, they've got 10 touchdown passes together. They're 5th in all-time connections between a wide receiver and a quarterback. Number one is obviously Brandon Cooks and Sean Mannion. But still, if I'm Isaiah Hodgins and I'm getting a 3rd to 4th round draft grade, I am gone from Oregon State. And that's not any disrespect to Oregon State University or their coaches or anything going on like that. It's simply I have to do, if I'm Isaiah Hodgins, he has to do what's best for him. And if that money is there and you have a chance to make an NFL roster as a 3rd to 4th round draft pick, I say take it.
He's got the size, speed. I mean,
that's the only question is the speed. That's the one thing that has kind of been debated back and forth is his speed. But when you watch his route running, his separation, and I don't claim to be an NFL scout or anything, but his release, his route running, separation, and hands, when you look at him, he's not going to be somebody who's going down the field and just flat out burning DBs to get catches. He is going to be a red zone target. He's going to be the guy that, like we saw several times, when you're down in the 20-yard line, you throw it up to him and you say, hey, go get this. Hey, you're Mr. Reliable. This is going to come to you. You have to catch the ball. And that's his hands are going to get him there. His route running, his separation on cuts. I mean, he's quick, but he's also deceptive in his route running in that you watch his feet and they're consistently moving. There's not one time where he kind of gets caught up on himself. He's always pushing himself to be the best guy. And when you ask almost anybody on that team, who is one of the last guys working on outside of football, just putting in the extra work, I mean, probably I'd say 90% are going to say Isaiah Hodgins.
Smart kid, too. I had a class with him last term, spring. But
well, I got to ask, what class was it?
Communication theory.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. Fun one.
Exactly. So
he's got that size, though. A little throwback here reminds me of Plaxico Burress in a way. Played for the
shot himself in the foot. That's what I remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we won't compare him in that scenario.
I'm not saying Isaiah Hodgins is going to take a gun into a club, but
yeah, we'll say that. But he's got the size to box people out there, and you see some of that.
All right, moving on. Just one more quick note on the football team that I wanted to mention before we move on to a little bit of recruiting. Jordan Shoecare. Although, a lot of people knock him for his consistency, knock him for the missed field goals, 17-17 on extra points. I mean, that's better than he was last year, 100%.
I mean, you can't blame him entirely. It was just It was just a fantastic kicking performance by Stanford. But the weather, the wind, I mean, you can't blame him necessarily.
That is true, but I mean, if you're going into your senior year kicking and you've experienced most of this before, I mean, you should at least be able to hit. I mean, you got to give him anything within 45 has got to be viable.
I'd agree with that.
Anyways, we'll go ahead and move on from that. I know it's a hot topic for a lot of people, but most recent commit for Oregon State football. You might recognize the last name Bolden. Victor Bolden Jr.'s younger brother, Silas Bolden, on 24/7. He's a 3-star, Rivals 2-star athlete from Rancho Cucamonga, California. Comes in at 5'10", 170, committed yesterday. 5.4 is his rating on Rivals. And I don't know how much you've seen of him, but Silas Bolden, he's dynamic. He's a playmaker and in a lot of similarities to his older brother, Vic Bolden. Got the explosiveness on the return. He's going to run crisp routes, and he's fast. He is fast.
Know his time? Or
I don't have his time right here, but, I mean, he chose Oregon State over offers like Hawaii, Idaho, and San Jose State. So not obviously the best.
Could be a little underrated there with
right, but still, 5'10", 170 is going to be coming in a little undersized, but the other thing is that he is good friends with another Oregon State commit, wide receiver Trevor Pope from Tracy, California. So you got two guys who are coming in who already got a little bit, obviously didn't go to the same school, but who know each other. You got familiarity within the recruiting class, and I believe Oregon State's doing a really good job of, just building a consistent recruiting class. The one thing that they're missing so far is offensive line.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing, but just a quick recap. So, in order of recency of commitments, you got Silas Bolden, Isaiah Newell, running back from Walnut Creek we mentioned earlier, and then Trevor Pope, wide receiver from Tracy. 2-star from Gig Harbor, Washington, O-line Samuel Peacock, the D-end JUCO transfer Alex Lemon, tight end Tommy Spencer from Roseville, linebacker Shane Caney from Mililani, Hawaii, Jason Walling Jr., linebacker from right around here in Kaiser, Oregon. Tavis Shippen, DN from San Jacinto. Cooper Darling, 3-star offensive lineman from Gilbert, Arizona. And then here come, one more guy was John Miller, linebacker from Tualatin, Oregon. But the big two guys from this recruiting class, wide receiver Zariah Beeson from Dallas, Texas, and quarterback Ben Gulbranson from Newbury Park, California. Those two guys are really at the forefront of this recruiting class along with Newell. So Oregon State, a lot of their fans are going to be hoping to get number 1 JUCO defensive end D tackle in the country in Latrell Bankston out of Hutchinson Community College in Kansas. He's obviously one of the top targets, but to help bolster that defensive line. One other topic that we want to cover, let's say 2, and we'll push the one that I had on my mind to the last couple minutes, but really quickly, for Oregon State, not as, you could say it pertains to Oregon State, but it's really an impact over the entire NCAA. But for California, signed Bill 206 into law, which is going to allow for athletes to profit from endorsements. And
the Fair Pay to Play Act.
Right. What are your thoughts on that?
Gavin Newsom. For what I've seen, I think that this has been in the making for a long time. You hear athletes like Draymond Green saying the NCAA is a dictatorship. You've seen it. LeBron James host a show on HBO called The Shop, which is where Governor Gavin Newsom described this, which was an interesting footstep for him to talk about this, but it won't be in effect until 2023. So
which gives other states a chance to catch up. So
which, I'm all for it. From what I know about it, don't have as much information off the top of my head as I could, but the NCAA has positioned itself in an unfortunate way for players of the future. You see it in a lot of different situations now with politics and other things, but executives just kind of raking in this stuff, money and publicity for these players.
Right.
And I think it's fair for them for how much they do. As a former college athlete, briefly, Division III golf, not even comparable, but just saying for how much they do, the time they take, the amount of respect I think is sometimes lost there.
Yeah. So I got a quick quote here from Newsom per the LA Times. Newsom says, quote, "We recognize that we need to keep an open mind about the consequences of this legislation. We want to engage in good faith the NCAA and other states, but at the end of the day, we want to address this injustice in higher education. No student is restricted in using their name, image, and likeness. Not one, only athletes."
NCAA football coming up soon. Video game. We've been looking forward to that for a while.
One of the things I think back to is several Ohio State players who actually got in trouble for selling their own memorabilia, signed jerseys, signed footballs and stuff to a tattoo parlor there in Columbus. Terrell Pryor and company. I'm not sure exactly who was there with him. But still, that's something that now would be considered legal if you played in California. So do you see that having an adverse effect on other teams in the Pac-12 not named Stanford, Cal, USC, UCLA?
I think so. I think for their namesake, their location, among other possibilities, I just don't see it being terribly effective for some schools. Let's say Oregon State. That was brought up before this.
But do you think, I guess really quickly to interrupt, but do you think that Oregon is going to, you can consider Oregon a pretty progressive state. Do you think that they are going to enact a law similar to this by 2023 to try and catch up with California? Do you think that it's that important for schools that have other conferences or, interest in the Pac-12? Or is this... I guess what I'm trying to drive at is this a Pac-12 problem or is this an NCAA problem? People are saying this is going to be the end of the NCAA. Personally, for me, I think that this is just giving an opportunity for athletes to be able to seek endorsement deals and get paid. Obviously, it's not just pertaining to football. You're going to see this in basketball, baseball, other sports. But what sport is the moneymaker? And that is football, which is why this is such a hot topic right now.
It's a hot topic as well because the term amateur is always brought up in these situations, and the fact that these students are amateurs, they're playing for what is known as the passion of the game, or what should be considered that. But when you bring in all these alternatives with money, endorsements, and everything, you can't really say that anymore. But it's difficult to say because it's affecting so many different levels, Division III, Division II, and a state like Oregon, let's say Montana, another one, doesn't have any Power 5 school, doesn't have a lot of money going in there compared to others. I'm just not sure how soon some of these states will jump in on it. You see,
I think it's definitely got to be one that have some sort of investment in Division I college football.
Yeah.
In
Illinois,
Division I college
New
basketball.
York and South Carolina have already introduced similar bills. So
right. So I mean, if you see it go into law, especially on the East Coast, especially in the South, I believe that would have a bigger impact nationally. Obviously, California has a lot of pull in Washington when it comes to different stuff. I don't want to get into the whole politics of this stuff, but again, I mean, personally, I'm from California. If I'm an athlete, especially, let's just use, for example, let's just say Isaiah Hodgins. If I'm Isaiah Hodgins and I'm choosing between committing to Oregon, Oregon State, and let's just throw in, because those were, I believe, his final two schools, and we'll throw in, let's say, USC. And if I go to USC, I get a percentage of sales on number 1 jerseys, and I know that I'm going to be one of the top players at I mean, why not do that?
Yeah.
Why not be able to help my family off of it? So obviously, I believe it provides some sort of a recruiting benefit. So we got 5 minutes, 5 till the hour here on KBVR. Again, the Beaver Sports Radio Show wrapping up here. Mitchell Monge alongside Soren. And one more quick topic we want to hit. It's been a topic throughout the state of Oregon. From last week, Oregon State's bye week, into this week, into Oregon's bye week. It went from the fans down south saying, oh, we didn't want this guy in the first place, to now saying, oh my gosh, we're so excited to have him. Big name in the state of Oregon, Devin Williams.
Yep.
Williams, a former number 1 athlete on Rivals in 2017, committed to USC after playing last season. Obviously, he had his biggest game of the year here in Reser Stadium in 2017, hauling in 3 catches for 70-something yards. Williams decided to transfer 2 weeks ago from USC, entered the transfer portal, and Oregon State announced that he was coming to Oregon State, sent out an official announcement, promoted it everywhere, and then that was last Wednesday, and by Friday, Williams announces on Twitter he's committing to Oregon. What are your thoughts on this?
Sad.
As an Oregon State fan, true.
As an Oregon State fan, I have friends who've sent me stuff from University of Oregon, and it's not surprising, I'll say. The fact that it's from one school to another, but the fact that it's from Oregon State to Oregon isn't terribly surprising.
Right.
And I heard things that there wasn't an open spot on the roster at Oregon, among
so
other
I believe
things.
I believe he's officially a walk-on at Oregon, if I'm not
that's
mistaken.
what he's considered. He's considered a walk-on. And after the unraveling for it, it's the only way I can say it is I'm not surprised. I mean, it's from Oregon State, Corvallis to Eugene. And we can go into other politics here with the why people may be coming to Oregon instead of other schools besides facilities. I won't name what it is, but cough, cough, maybe money. But I'm not surprised.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, so here was Williams' announcement on Twitter. First, I would like to say thank you to the Oregon State University, especially Coach Smith, for opening their arms to me and my family and giving me the opportunity to play in their program. The past 3 weeks have taught me so much. I am so honored and excited to be attending my dream school. This has been a long time coming, and I appreciate everyone who has helped me get to this place. I know in my heart this is where I belong, and I cannot wait to begin playing in Autzen Stadium wearing the green and yellow. With all that said, I would like to announce it is official. I'm a Duck at the University of Oregon. And just correcting my mistake from earlier, number 1 athlete in the class of 2018.
Dream school.
So it came down to Oregon and USC for Williams during his recruitment. Everybody thought he was a Duck commit. And then signing day flips to USC. And a really similar situation here,
Yeah.
Everybody says, okay, he's coming up to Oregon State. I mean, we're going to make the official announcement. And from what I've heard, it sounds like Oregon State did not, and this is what Coach Smith has been saying to the media, Oregon State did not commit any penalties or anything. They didn't infringe on recruiting rights because the transfer portal
made any mistakes. Yeah,
right. The transfer portal is so ambiguous. There's not a lot of specificity with it. You can only sign one national letter of intent, and that is when you graduate high school. Williams signed his NLI to USC. Then he can sign what's called a non-binding financial agreement to as many schools as he wants. He can enroll for classes at as many schools as he wants. But as soon as he shows up and attends one day of class, he is committed. It's my understanding that Devin Williams never attended one day of class at Oregon State. He enrolled in Oregon State. He was in their student directory. He got put on the football roster. There was an official announcement made, but he did not show up to class. Therefore, he was non-binding. He had a non-binding agreement to Oregon State University. Word is that Coach Cristobal called him after this official announcement was put out by Oregon State. And since there is the official transfer portal rules that are, again, as we said, very ambiguous, not very clear, he was able to flip and go to Oregon.
I wonder if that left some bad blood between
Coach Smith wonder.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be very tough. Anyways, we're wrapping it up as we get to the top of the hour here on the Beaver Sports Radio Show. Just again, quick breakdown, Oregon State. We didn't get to talk about it much, but Oregon State heads down to UCLA for a game this Saturday.
Rose Bowl.
DTR not likely to play with a high ankle sprain. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the quarterback for the Bruins. Soren, as we wrap it up here, any last thoughts from you?
It's a winnable game. That's all I've got to say. Go Beavs.
It is a very winnable game. Oregon State, UCLA this Saturday, October 5th. Of course, the next home game. Soren and myself, Mitchell Monge, we will have the call on KBVR October 12th. It's a Saturday game, 5 p.m. kickoff here on KBVR Corvallis 88.7 FM in the Corvallis area. So again, for Soren and myself, Mitchell Monge, we'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Beaver Sports Radio Show. Be sure to tune in next week at 5 o'clock. This week was an early showing because of an open house here at Orange Media Network. We will be back with the Beaver Sports Radio Show. Again, a big thank you to Alex Luther, Steven Sandberg, and everybody who helped coordinate us, Garrett Gravink. Again, thank you for tuning in. This has been the Beaver Sports Radio Show, and stay tuned, as always, to KBVR 88.7 FM.